If a single policy decision could quietly destabilize millions of American jobs, weaken one of the most important manufacturing industries in North America, and hand long-term market power to foreign competitors, would most people even notice it happening? Right now, that is the risk taking shape beneath the surface of the United States-Canada trade relationship, and it is centered on one industry that touches nearly every household: automobiles. At first glance, the conflict appears simple. The United States wants to reduce its automotive trade deficit. Canada exports tens of billions of dollars worth of vehicles and components south of the border every year. Tariffs, in theory, are meant to correct that imbalance by forcing production back onto American soil. But the moment we move past political slogans and examine how the North American auto system actually works, a far more fragile reality begins to emerge. The United States automotive deficit did not appear overnight. It has grown steadily over decades as supply chains became continental rather than national. According to official trade data, the United States imports hundreds of billions of dollars worth of vehicles and auto parts annually, while exporting only a fraction of that amount. This imbalance has become a political pressure point in Washington, often framed as evidence that American workers are losing while foreign producers benefit. That framing, however, overlooks a critical detail. Canada is not simply a foreign supplier. It is an integrated structural component of the U.S. automotive ecosystem. Modern vehicles assembled in the United States are rarely the product of a single country. Engines, transmissions, aluminum frames, electronic systems, and battery components move back and forth across the U.S.-Canada border multiple times before a car ever reaches a showroom. Research into automotive supply chains shows that a vehicle assembled in states like Michigan or Ohio often contains a substantial share of Canadian-sourced components. In practical terms, this means tariffs imposed on Canada do not remain at the border. They travel directly into American factories. This is where the first contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. Tariffs designed to protect American manufacturing raise the cost of manufacturing inside the United States itself. Even modest disruptions in cross-border flows can halt production lines that rely on just-in-time delivery systems. These factories do not stockpile weeks of inventory. In some cases, a delay of less than an hour is enough to stop assembly entirely. When production stops, wages stop. When wages stop, local economies feel the impact almost immediately. The cost pressure does not end at the factory gate. When production becomes more expensive, vehicle prices rise. Industry analysts have repeatedly warned that tariffs on integrated supply chains translate directly into higher sticker prices. At a time when American consumers are already facing elevated interest rates on car loans, rising insurance premiums, and higher maintenance costs, even a modest price increase can push demand lower. Lower demand leads to reduced output. Reduced output leads to layoffs. The cycle accelerates faster than policymakers often expect. Yet even this does not fully explain why the United States faces a uniquely vulnerable position in a trade confrontation with Canada. The deeper risk lies not in what the United States imports, but in where it sells. Canada is not just a supplier to the American auto industry, it is also its single most important foreign customer. Each year, Canadian consumers purchase tens of billions of dollars worth of vehicles built in the United States. There is no equivalent replacement market waiting in the wings. European buyers overwhelmingly favor domestic brands. Japan and South Korea have deeply entrenched automakers of their own. China's electric vehicle industry is expanding rapidly and has little incentive to absorb American exports. That leaves Canada as one of the only large high-income markets where U.S. automakers maintain significant influence. If Canadian demand weakens, the revenue loss is immediate and difficult to recover. This is where Canada's rarely discussed leverage comes into focus: consumer behavior. If Canadian buyers reduce their purchases of U.S.-built vehicles even modestly, the financial impact on American manufacturers is severe. A decline of just a few percentage points translates into billions of dollars in lost exports. A larger shift could force assembly plants to scale back production or shut down temporarily. Unlike tariffs, which take time to negotiate and implement, consumer shifts can happen quickly and quietly. Canada also has options. Japanese and South Korean brands already hold substantial market share within Canada. European automakers are aggressively expanding their electric vehicle offerings. Mexico remains a competitive source of affordable models. In many cases, vehicles sold under American brand names are already assembled in Canadian factories, meaning Canadian consumers could continue buying familiar brands while bypassing U.S. production entirely. From a strategic perspective, this creates a pressure point Washington cannot easily counter. As the dispute escalates, global competitors are paying close attention. Trade conflicts rarely remain bilateral. When access becomes restricted in one market, opportunity opens elsewhere. Japanese and South Korean manufacturers are well positioned to expand in Canada without altering their existing supply chains. German automakers view North American uncertainty as a chance to scale premium and electric models. And China, now the world's largest vehicle exporter, is actively seeking international markets where political resistance is lower. Canada occupies a unique position in this global contest. Unlike the United States or the European Union, it has not yet erected broad barriers against Chinese electric vehicles. If Chinese manufacturers gain a foothold during a period of US-Canada tension, the effects could last for years. Once consumers adapt to new brands and technologies, loyalty rarely snaps back overnight. Every vehicle sold by a foreign competitor represents not just a lost sale, but a lost relationship. Inside the United States, the domestic consequences would arrive quickly. The auto industry supports millions of jobs across assembly plants, parts suppliers, logistics networks, and small manufacturing firms. These jobs are concentrated in regions already sensitive to economic disruption. Even short-term production interruptions can cascade into reduced hours, canceled shifts, and layoffs. Analysts have warned that sustained declines in Canadian demand could eliminate tens of thousands of American jobs, with secondary industries absorbing additional losses. Ironically, the regions expected to benefit most from protective trade policies could be the first to suffer. Midwestern manufacturing states rely heavily on stable cross-border trade. When that stability disappears, the economic shock is localized, immediate, and politically difficult to manage. What begins as a policy aimed at restoring industrial strength risks, accelerating industrial fragility instead. Canada, meanwhile, faces its own set of challenges, but also a different set of strategic choices. Its automotive sector is highly exposed to U.S. demand, yet its domestic market holds meaningful influence. A coordinated shift toward vehicles produced in Canadian plants could stabilize employment and encourage further investment. Combined with foreign partnerships and electric vehicle expansion, Canada could gradually reduce its reliance on U.S. imports. That shift would not be painless, but it would be transformative. The long-term implications extend beyond cars. Supply chains, once fractured, do not easily reassemble. Investment follows predictability. If companies conclude that U.S.-Canada trade relations can be disrupted by political cycles, future factories, battery plants, and research centers may be built elsewhere. Mexico, Europe, and Asia all stand ready to absorb that investment. This is why the current moment matters more than it appears. What looks like a dispute over tariffs is, in reality, a test of North America's economic architecture. Cooperation built over decades is being weighed against short-term political gain. The outcome will shape manufacturing decisions, consumer behavior, and global competitiveness for years to come. The defining question is no longer whether tariffs can reduce a trade deficit. It is whether the United States can pursue confrontation without weakening the very system that sustains its industrial power. And if Canada chooses to exercise its leverage, the balance of the North American auto industry may shift faster and more permanently than anyone in Washington expects.